This is it, man. A few more seconds to showtime.
Two different levels, I cannot relate.
The more I read, the more I learned, the more I understood, this was not a tool. This was a revolution.
Gotta let people know Bitcoin is money. It's not a commodity. It's not digital capital. It's not a digital gold. It's money. We gotta use it that way.
Family close, put in work and secure the bag and then take it back to my foes.
The Bitcoin Way educates and empowers every individual on how to regain full control over their wealth, how to protect it, and how to get it right the first time, so that there's no mistakes and no anxiety in any stage of that process.
I think there are two important things that people should understand about self-custody. First of all is that it is critical. You only hold your wealth if you take 100% self-custody. In anything else, you're taking on counterparty risk. You're exposing yourself to government intervention, regulations, failed businesses, and so forth. But the second and another very fundamentally important thing about self-custody is that anybody can do it. It's a new set of skills, but it's not that complicated. You just need the right teacher to help walk you through the process to do it correctly the first time.
For once, we have an asset that you can truly own yourself, and it's critical to take ownership over this asset to maintain its power and to ensure that you are in charge of your money and your money doesn't get eaten up by inflation or any other thing that's happening around the world.
Self-custody is so important because the whole idea around Bitcoin is to move away from counterparty risk, to move away from centralization. And if you're storing your Bitcoin with counterparties, you're just delaying the real adoption of Bitcoin, where we separate money and state and have a better world. So if you really want to be a part of the change, your Bitcoin should be truly yours. It shouldn't be shared with anyone, and it should be used. You shouldn't be afraid to use your Bitcoin. The Bitcoin only will become what it is supposed to become if you really use it and know how to use it, more importantly, not just to store it.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Bitcoin Way Live. I have my man Tony here with me. Tony, how you doing?
What's up, Michael? I'm doing great, man. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you. Always fun. Tony, we're getting some very kind comments here already. Timmy Adamson, the best Bitcoin podcast. Thank you for that. We've got our friend Matthew Kappa. I now hate weekends because there are no lives.
Come join us in the land of the free. It's live every day, man.
That's right. All righty. We've got someone here tuning in, Carla Sutton. Good evening from Bali.
Hey, Carla, nice to hear from you.
So cool. It's always fun. We're seeing all these folks from all over the world joining. I know,
nice exotic locations.
I know, man, especially as just a dumb American, you know, seeing that we've got people from all over the place and getting to connect with everyone. We got to stack the dip, says stay humble, stack sats. Absolutely.
Spot on, man. Spot on. Today is a good day.
It's always a good day. It's especially a good day though when payday comes in the midst of a dip. I'll say that as someone who
well, yeah, I mean, it depends on which side you're standing on, right?
yeah. Well, I'm on the right side of that trade.
Correct. Yes.
Well, no, for everyone who is joining and has joined, do us a huge favor. Keep the chat active. Ask us questions. We'd love to riff on anything you guys want to talk about. Our agenda is a lot less structured on these sorts of shows. We've got some topics we can dive into, but there's no sort of requirement that we feel we have. So we're going to talk a lot about what's going on in the world today. But Tony, let's start with a little bit of Panama, my friend. You guys are down there onboarding 50 plus folks onto their Plan B residencies.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about, just give me an update. Fill me in.
Well, listen, Panama's been great, man. This is our, I think, single biggest, get together here in terms of people that are coming here. And, it's not just by fluke coincidence that a lot of people are starting to pay attention to Panama and other freedom-loving jurisdictions out there. It's because the situation globally is really, really bad. And there's only a small percentage of individuals that are actually, in tune with all of this, which is terrifying to me, and we try to do our best to push out awareness about all of this stuff, but it takes a certain participation from the other side, and also in order to be receptive to this news and to actually do something about it, right? And so the bullish news, the good signal, is that from our end we are seeing like a considerable uptick in people that are waking up and that are actually taking the right measures in order to protect themselves, because really at this stage, that's like at the highest thing of anybody's priority list, is generally to protect yourself, both financially and of course more importantly physically. You don't want to be stuck in a situation where you can potentially be in harm's way. And I know a lot of people don't see that. Again, it depends on where you're sitting. I mean, just last weekend, no one in Dubai, for example, expected, to have a day where it's raining rockets and drones, right? I mean, this is, for those that have been sitting in the "oh, this can't happen here" club. I think this was, a very brutal wake-up call that, that is just a delusion. When things go bad, it doesn't really matter where you are and how rich you are. You are going to be affected just like anybody else, right? And so I hope this serves as a lesson to anyone that is still, living, with, these pink colored glasses, that sometimes the world does not work the way it's advertised. And it's a constant effort from every individual to be paying attention to what's happening. Like, you can't, what I call the ostrich syndrome. You can't like dig your head into the floor there and pretend everything's going to be okay just because you don't see it. Things are going to, unravel and play out, whether you like it or not, whether you want to accept it or not. This is just how life goes. And so, thankfully, enough people are starting to pay attention, which is why we are starting to see, and at least from our inner circle, our clients, a considerable uptick in people actually moving or considering very seriously to move to countries like Panama, which are, putting all the right pieces in place to protect individuals, to guarantee, their freedoms, that their money, goes further, that they're not going to be harassed with tyrannical nonsense on a weekly basis. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on, man, but that's a rabbit hole we can dive into if you want, during this live stream.
Yeah. So I guess my comment on all of that is you cannot control insane, tyrannical leaders. You can control what is within the control of your own life. And obviously, we talk about Bitcoin self-custody, opting out of the system in so many ways. But part of that is having this plan. Like, if you are in a jurisdiction that could be the next, UAE or Iran or any of these places that, I mean, if you're in Iran, I guess you probably saw the writing on the wall. At some point, there was going to be conflict, but there are a lot of other places already being affected that probably weren't anticipating this. You need to make sure that you're preparing in advance, in anticipation of insane decisions by insane people, and not reactively addressing the circumstances in which you might find yourself. Tony, we've got a handful of people who are commenting on the Plan B talk that you did with Adam. So for anyone who wasn't there, we had just like the coolest live stream with our friend Adam Hudson. So he told the story of escaping Australia, which we talk a lot about all of the craziness there, but it applied, I think, across the board. If you're in any jurisdiction where you're beginning to see the writing on your wall that things are going to get worse, the taxation is going to get worse, the surveillance is going to get worse, the money printing is going to get worse, that we're going to declare war or not declare war, but just start bombing people. I think it was one of the best discussions we've had, and he kind of broke down like the mechanics of how he approached this, how he thought about adopting a new lifestyle, how Bitcoin and self-custody enabled a lot of what he did, how he liquidated all of his assets in Australia. Unfortunately, I'm saying all of this, it wasn't a private event. I mean, we opened it to anyone who wanted to sign up. It's not a video that anyone has access to right now unless you were registered for the event. I anticipate that could be something that we open back up at some point. But if you were there, you've got 6 hours, 5 hours, I think, until we take it down. So it is sort of an exclusive thing, and I think we'll probably do something like that again here very soon. But I think it's just something that needs to be on everyone's radar. So on that subject, Tony, why don't you sort of give your perspective on what's going on in the world? Because I think a lot of people are asking these questions. I'm trying to sort through it, and I ignore the mainstream media, but trying to piece it all together is incredibly challenging.
Man, you know what? The funny thing is, growing up, I was never much of a historian, nor did I take, very big interest in my history class. In fact, it was the class where I fell asleep the quickest, right? But ever since, my collapse and, being down the rabbit hole, I don't know, man, there's been this very passionate interest to really revisit, events that have happened in the past to sort of explain what is going on now. And for the last 2 weeks, that is exactly what I've been doing. Watching a lot of videos talking about, past collapses, how past empires, also thought they were invincible and they had, global power and what have you. And today they are completely either non-existent or irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. And lo and behold, man, the famous saying, history always repeats itself. Well, this is exactly what we're seeing now, except this time around, it's the US that is the main spotlight. And I've written down a lot of notes. Like, I'm going to read some of them off because I don't want to forget anything. But let me get into what I've found. And of course, these are just my opinions and what I've concluded based on everything that I've been reading lately. So I'll share that with you. So basically, all the insanity that we're seeing now is, can be summed up as this is what happens when the mothership, a superpower, goes into full collapse. And usually these collapses, they happen, in steps, in stages. They don't happen, overnight. And every empire before the US followed pretty much the exact same script that's happening now, whether it was Spain at one point, then it was, I guess it was Britain, and then it was the Soviet Union. At some point, each one of these, superpowers dominated, the globe, and no one thought, this would ever end. They all believed they were eternal because they were so great and almighty and what have you, until the day came where they just went poof and out they go. And we are seeing this happen almost exactly copy paste with the United States. And stage one is military focused. The US military is overextended. This is, anybody can research this. It's a clear fact. They have over 750 military bases all over the world. And, there's almost $1 trillion budget annually in order to try and sustain it. But the equipment is starting to age. The recruitment is definitely down. And the US has commitments it simply cannot fulfill. Like, for example, if China decides to invade Taiwan, or Russia invades NATO, or Iran, decides to close the Persian Gulf all at once, there's no chance the US is able to cater to all of these simultaneously. It's just not going to happen, right? And so just like Spain, just like the UK, just like the Soviet Union in the past, it's a no-go. The second issue is the currency debasement. Since 1971, the US dollar, has lost over 98% of its purchasing power, and that is nowhere near slowing down. So this is the result of endless money printing. Spain in the past, it destroyed its currency, which was silver-based coins, by injecting all sorts of garbage into it. And so at one point, there was barely any silver left in their currency, and merchants simply stopped accepting it, and it hyperinflated. Britain and the Soviet Union had their own versions of this bullshit, but essentially, they all had their currency collapse, right? And then you have the debt spiral. That's, usually step 3. So right now, as very public information, the US owns close to $37 trillion in interest, and the interest payments alone are close to $1 trillion. There's no chance the US is able to pay anything close to that back. It's just not going to happen. Even if you were to seize everybody's asset, every asset of every American citizen, forget the bank accounts, everything you own, you wouldn't come remotely close to anywhere near the interest that is owed on that debt. And so what do? They keep borrowing money to pay off the interest, and that's a debt spiral. You borrow to repay past borrowing, and that goes on and on and on, going absolutely nowhere. So that's step 3. Step 4 is usually the loss of productive capacity. These days, America doesn't make much anymore. It consumes, right? Almost all the production is either in China, Venezuela, or Vietnam. So the US is importing approximately a little over 800 billion more than it exports annually. And it's almost entirely dependent on these foreign supply chains. Things like medicine, steel, even military components right now, they are dependent on foreign supply chains. That's not good. The other thing we're starting to see more of is step 5, the social decay, right? Trust in institutions and governments is as an all-time low. Crime is rising very quickly. Homelessness is exploding. Drug overdoses kills over 100,000 Americans every year. And the smartest and wealthiest people are leaving. That is an undeniable fact. You can, reference it with statistics that are publicly available. So very few people are also having kids. I mean, why would they? They can't afford anything. And why would you raise someone in such a dire environment? So there's a lot of that going through people's minds. Politically, the dysfunction is at an all-time high. People can't agree on anything, and as such, you can't fix or build anything. The signs of extreme decay are everywhere, but everyone pretends that things are fine, things are normal. Remember, like that ostrich syndrome. Stick your head in the sand and pretend everything's okay. That's not how things work. So it's happening in real time, and this is exactly where we are today. The US, as far as I can tell, is in this stage 5. And for reference, the Soviet Union made it to stage 5 before it completely collapsed. However, there are further steps. It can still get worse. And that's when you go into step 6, which is the loss of the reserve currency status. This is when your allies, they switch to other forms of money, other forms of payment, bypassing the global reserve, entirely. This is also when the dollar comes flooding back home because nobody wants it. Okay, we're already seeing strong signs of this. That BRICS is developing its own payment trails. Central banks are buying gold. Saudi Arabia is starting to accept non-dollar forms of payment, something that's never happened in the past. And of course, the one thing that nobody saw coming, the incorruptible, unconfiscatable, sound and neutral money, Bitcoin, that no living soul can manipulate or control. I know a lot of people still think of it as a speculation. They don't take it too seriously, but this is a growing fact. Bitcoin is being adopted, not publicly, but it is being adopted behind the scenes by those that clearly see what's coming. So that's step 6. And then the most dangerous part is when you reach the very end, which is stage 7, the complete and total collapse. This usually isn't gradual. This is immediate and sudden, in the same way it happened in Lebanon, in the same way it happened in Iran and other countries before them. When the reserve currency fails, you go from being the superpower to being irrelevant, almost like immediately. And so when the debt becomes impossible, when the military can't be funded, that decline isn't gradual. It's violent and it's sudden. And every delusional fool that thinks, oh, this can't happen here, learns that brutal lesson the exact same way other delusional fools before them have. It can, and it always does. So 3 empires before the US followed this exact same pattern. This time is no different. And so if you are living your life pretending none of this is going on, this is going to be a very violent wake-up call that I don't think many are in a position to recover from, right? And I'm not here to become the messenger of doom and gloom here. I'm just someone who is seeing the writing on the wall. And what worries me more than the problem itself is how many people are oblivious to it, right? Because when people are betrayed suddenly, that is not something you can prepare for. I've seen it in my own lifetime. This is why I keep calling this the ugliest movie no one has ever watched before. You simply cannot spend beyond your means. This isn't just common sense. It's simple math. And you can't assume that you can rule by tyranny and bullying forever and not expect retaliation at some point. Stage 6 and 7 cannot be avoided once you complete stage 5, which again is where I believe we are right now, right? So this is something that I wanted to put out there in case, people weren't aware of it, or, just wanted, just an opinion about this. Again, these are my thoughts. You can factually confirm them and check them if you want. But doing nothing in today's world, especially economically, is suicide.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And that's a very good breakdown, I think, of where we're at, where we're headed. The other thing you left out, Tony, this is one of your favorite topics, but Claude 1542 said, watched a video last night with a guy setting up a Bitcoin wallet with OpenClaw AI agent and was transacting with it. It's going to happen fast. No bank will issue a bank account to an AI agent. And we're going to see more and more of that, I think. It's, for me, like, this is the analogy I still use all the time. I think it's so good, is Saifedean's gunpowder analogy. Like, Bitcoin is monetary gunpowder. And my interpretation of what he means by that is, you can choose, in the 10th century in China, you could have chosen not to adopt gunpowder for warfare, but you'd get obliterated, right? The same way that's true with Bitcoin. You can choose, you can opt out of Bitcoin and opt in and continue to opt into the fiat system. But eventually you're going to have Bitcoin, because the people who are producing real world value are going to begin to demand it. To me, that is like the inescapable truth of Bitcoin. I know for myself at this point, my understanding, my conviction of Bitcoin, I wouldn't go work for fiat anymore. If you guys offered to pay me in fiat, I would say, no, pay me in Bitcoin. And more people who are doing certainly even more valuable things than running a podcast and partnership programs at the Bitcoin way. People are producing oil, people who are producing energy, people who are producing real goods that human beings need to survive and thrive, are going to just say, give me Bitcoin. And governments aren't going to have the opportunity to continue paying in fiat, because the suppliers will just say, no, I'm done, or I'm scaling back manufacturing to make it more difficult for you to buy the things that government thinks they need moving forward. So I think that's really where the rubber meets the road on a lot of this, is just people are going to demand it. I also will comment that you lay out this very compelling case for why what we're experiencing now is very common throughout history. And yet I feel like I live two lives, right? I get on these live streams with you. I'm constant chats with the guy, the members of our team, talking to Bitcoiners all the time. And like, I think everyone kind of gets it, or at least they have a sense, maybe they don't agree with us exactly, but largely they understand what we're talking about. And then I go back to like my normie life, where I have, a large swath of friends and family who they don't know what's in the Epstein files. They are getting their interpretation of, what's going on in Iran from Fox News or CNN. And the best they can tell is that it's weapons of mass destruction in Iraq 2.0. We can't let Iran have, nuclear warheads. And like, how long have we been weeks away from Iran having nuclear warheads? Like 40 years, 30 years or something. And the same playbook is used over and over, because it works. It works on 90% of the normie sheep that you're referring to. And until more of those people wake up, it's going to be a much slower ship to turn, I think, toward a Bitcoin standard, toward a neutral monetary system. But
yeah, but you
see,
there's a reason for this. I mean, it's not by fluke that the masses are so ignorant. The whole system, like your whole world, has been designed to keep you this ignorant. Whether it's the schools, whether it's the media, whether it's the news outlets, all of it is lies. All of it is geared, and it's all controlled by the same people that want you to believe what works for them, right? And so, if you're going to believe the stupidity that the Iran is a nuclear threat, then you're very naive, because the nuclear threat is the last thing behind the cause of what's happening now. Right now, there's a power struggle over the money. It's always about money. It's nothing. It's rarely about anything else. The dollar is dying. Everybody knows it, including the U.S. So there's a massive push towards digital currencies, central bank digital currencies. No matter what you hear, the marketing politically, don't believe this bullshit. There's no government that is not at least no tyrannical government that is not going gung-ho for digital IDs, digital money, all of that stupidity. But in order for that system to work, they need everybody on board. And Iran seems to be giving the US the finger, right? They don't want to have any part of their infrastructure. It's not to say that Iran doesn't want to create its own digital currency. They just don't want one relying or connected to anything West, from the West, anything US based. They want to do it on their own, completely independent. We don't want your dollar. The US doesn't like this because it interferes with their plans. And so, of course, now you have, these wars, so to speak. And so Iran is retaliating. And why is it picking these seemingly innocent countries? Well, because these innocent countries are supporting US military bases. And so they're a closer threat to them. And so they retaliate. I mean, this is why I'm saying you cannot continue to be the aggressor and the bullier forever, thinking, no one's going to push back at some point. And now, unfortunately, there's many options, many viable options that different players can use to push back. So assuming the money narrative fails, there is an alternative. Iran mines massive amounts of Bitcoin every single year, right? That's a fact. Why? Because they can, and because no one can stop them. So when you attack Iran, it's because maybe you're trying to indirectly destroy that infrastructure to prevent them from becoming financially independent. Do you understand how this game is played? And so this only works for so long because, again, in today's world, we have these nation states have many options available to them that weren't necessarily around back then. And if you go down the history rabbit hole, something I've also been doing recently, if you think back to Libya, like a few decades ago, why was he killed? If you read the newspaper, he's like the worst criminal, terrorist, whatever they labeled him. The reason he was killed is because he wanted to build his own central bank, based on gold, nothing to do with the dollar.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the big mafia didn't like this, and so they terminated that threat. These options are what I'm telling you are not as easily executed anymore these days. And so we are starting to see these desperate attempts to somehow remain with that delusion that somehow you can maintain a threshold by force, by aggression, by threats, by this and by that. But that curveball that no one saw coming is not going to you can't get rid of it. You're not going to put the genie back in the bottle. Yeah. Bitcoin exists, right? And so there's also parallel efforts out there to keep the masses distracted from the fact that this is a viable option. This is where I keep telling you that they rebrand or repackage Bitcoin as a TradFi product. Oh, look, don't touch it. It's too risky. It's too volatile. No, it's not. Oh, use Bitcoin, but as an ETF or Bitcoin treasury, because it's not Bitcoin. It's complete rubbish. It keeps you tied into that same corrupt system, right? These are the strong narratives. And that's the problem, is that they're very strong. There's almost a limitless amount of funding that enables that messaging. And so to counter it, if you don't have similar budgets, it's going to take much longer until someone blows up, like their life blows up, and then that psyop, that these narratives don't work on them anymore. Yeah. And that's also something that is going on. Like, you think the Iranian people are going to take a long time to understand Bitcoin? A lot of them have adopted it like crazy, almost like in minutes after things fell apart. And the more this decay spreads to other countries, because it will, this is again, when empires fall, that insanity is like a contagion effect. More people are going to find their way into the one thing that can actually save their lives.
And Tony, you hit on something I pulled up here. So this is from 2019. Okay, this is not like this last week. It's so Buttcoin said there isn't a single goddamn thing Bitcoin can do for retail that Apple Pay doesn't already do 10x better. And someone responded, I can't use Apple Pay, et cetera, et cetera. I'm from Iran. I can use Bitcoin. What do you have to say? And I think that's the thing, is like, it goes back to like this Max Payne thesis that we have, that people have to experience like this acute level of pain in order to come to Bitcoin, or they have to already be the kind of person who is just curious enough to dig in, study, learn, be open-minded to change their perspective. And unless you're that, you're going to have to be in Iran and experience not being able to use sort of the mainstream fiat rails to transact, to do the things that you want to do. And then it will become very clear to many, many millions of people quickly. I'm going to add a couple of comments here. Oh, real quick. Matthew J said, smash that like, MJ will smile instead of looking pissed. So if I was looking pissed, I apologize. I'm pissed about the war that I'm helping. Well, my countrymen are helping to fund, but I'm not pissed off, generally speaking. What I was going to say, though, is when it comes to Iran, I don't know much about the Iranian government, the people, the politics, right? Like, I'm not defending Iran here. What I am attacking is this interventionist posture that the United States and the Western world always takes. I think that I agree with you, like on the Libya comment. I think there's always like an underlying reason. They spin a particular jurisdiction, nation to look a particular way. It's evil dictatorship. We have to go free those people. When in reality, I haven't done a deep dive on this, but what you said is correct. That was it Gaddafi? I get all the world leaders mixed up. Yeah, Gaddafi was actually creating, helping to form a nation of greater self-sovereignty, autonomy, and bringing them out of the dark ages, so to speak. My suspicion, like my hunch, is always if I'm hearing that it's an evil, tyrannical dictatorship that we have to go attack, my assumption, because I'm so skeptical of our politicians, is it's probably the opposite of that. There's probably something else at play. The other thing is, it's always a very convenient boogeyman for feeding the military industrial complex. Like the United States in particular, we have to have our enemies. We have to have our boogeymen. It's China, it's Russia, it's Iran, it's North Korea. Because if we don't get to spend money on all the things that politicians want to spend money on. They can't scratch the back of all their big donors. The revolving door from government to big pharma, to the military industrial complex, to big food, to all of these other, almost quasi-government industries, it disappears. And so they have to have these interventions, or the game is up. And, we want that, but they don't want that.
It's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of Americans that are very patriotic, right? And for very good reason, to accept the fact that the enemy has always been within, right? Most of the time, the enemy was not a foreign source. It was an inside one. And there's, of course, many events that you can reference to confirm all of these things. Whether you want to believe the 9/11 story, whether there's a lot of details around that as well that some people to this day will not accept, even though they are crystal clear.
We go in there, Tony. We go in there.
Half a brain, right? And like many other stories and events that have happened over the last 80 years or so, if you actually take some time and revisit every single one of them, you will see that they all have one common denominator: the same enemy from within, right? And so that enemy is running out of options right now, because their source to fund all of this is failing with no recourse. And so the only hope in hell to keep this going a bit longer is to rely on sheer ignorance, or to concoct a system where you're literally stuck, which is where those digital IDs and central bank digital currencies come in. Don't think for a minute that these are not at the highest level of priorities for that type of government. Except, in the U.S., they're being marketed as the coolest thing, right? These stable coins, woohoo, the best thing, cheaper, faster. You want to use these. That's the trap, and a lot of people, unfortunately, are going to get slaughtered by this.
Yeah, I completely agree. We've got a handful of comments here I want to get to. So we've got, first of all, just an aside, guys, will you participate at Prague 2026?
Yes,
Of course, we will be there. I think our friend John made a good point. He said if they wanted to free Iran, they would drop copies of the Bitcoin Standard instead of bombs. That way,
absolutely.
absolutely. You mentioned Panama as a Plan B residence. Are there other good options? Tony, why don't you take that one?
There's probably a lot of options, but it depends what you're looking for. I mean, before deciding on Panama, we really, tore apart, every jurisdiction on the planet for about 9 months to see which one checks the most boxes. So it wasn't a very, lighthearted decision. I mean, it was mostly for me initially, for those that don't know this, because I needed somewhere to go where the likelihood of a Lebanon was as close to zero as possible. So good enough was not good enough. It really had to be, the best of the best of what's available out there. And, for the time being, Panama definitely checks these boxes, and things are actually getting even better, believe it or not. And so if one day things changes, I mean, so be it. And we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I don't foresee that happening anytime soon, simply because the incentives to continuously grow, in the direction of abundance here, and the preservation of freedom and your rights as a human being are growing. And a lot of people are seeing this, and there's a lot of good traffic coming this way.
Yeah. One of the things I made this comment, this is just an observation from me. So I still have not been to Panama. It's on my to-do list. Everything we talk about, like my conviction is so high. I've got little kids, very busy schedule, but that's something that I do want to address. When you look at, so like a lot of people like ask, well, what about like El Salvador, right? You've got Bukele and a lot of hype around their Bitcoin environment. And I think that's awesome, right? I'm not knocking Bukele or El Salvador, no real comment. What it seems to me the differences between El Salvador and Panama that is worth considering is Bukele will not last as a leader forever. His conviction seems very high. And maybe there comes a day where Bukele's out of office and the whole Bitcoin thing just kind of dissolves, right? Like he was the one really pushing and promoting it. The next guy just doesn't really care. My sense with Panama, and Tony, feel free to comment on this, is it's becoming more just embedded culturally. Like you can pay for government services in Panama City with Bitcoin. They're talking about integrating Bitcoin payments into the Panama Canal. Like there are just a lot of sort of other things happening. It's not just like a benevolent dictator or a single leader saying, "Hey, we're going to sign this new thing." And hopefully the next guy continues to, agree with that. The banks you can send your Bitcoin to a bank in order to, we obviously don't think you should keep it there, but you can send it there and see your balance in, dollars and Bitcoin in a way that most jurisdictions, it's like you can't even hardly buy Bitcoin anymore because they're trying to shut the on-ramps. Panama is it's got this culture that seems to just be sort of beginning to work with it organically in a way that other places are. It's been more, and I don't mean this in a derogatory sense, but it's been more imposed by someone who gets it, which I think is a very distinct, a very important distinction to draw.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, there are many beautiful places around the planet, but I mean, it depends really what you're looking for. As far as we're concerned, we really wanted to check as many boxes as possible before, deciding on the next move. El Salvador is a stunning country. There's a lot of people that swear by it, and I understand why. However, if you were to compare, just for the sake of this live stream, if you want to compare El Salvador to Panama, Panama is a more mature country. It's a more developed country. And so when you're coming, let's say from the US or like from Europe, when you land here in the city, first of all, visually, everything is more familiar, right? Like there's less of the sort of like the jungle life here versus some of the other countries. Now, some people might like that, and that's fine. It's not to hate on it, but there's that. Also, the infrastructure here in Panama is very pro what most freedom loving individuals are looking for. For example, there is no central bank in Panama, and there is no military in Panama, right? These are two very big deals when you zoom out and you understand. There's no central bank digital currency here. There's no central bank. There's no military, so the risk of Panama getting involved in something crazy is almost nil. The infrastructure, the rails for Bitcoin here exists. You can pay public services in Bitcoin, government taxes, whatever you want there. Bitcoin is accepted here. A lot more merchants are starting to accept it. Some of the banks here have already adopted Bitcoin natively. Like when you set up a bank account, especially those that we help you put together, they give you a USD account, a Bitcoin address, and a USDT address. Something that you never see in most banks. And of course, they have other custodial services that, they promote, such as, the whole borrowing as your Bitcoin. I'm not a fan of it, but, for those who want it, the banks here do it. It's like it's native to the other services that they offer here. And so there's a lot more of that taking place here. And of course, the more people learn and understand, and education thrives in the country, and more people start living by example on a Bitcoin standard, the positive word of mouth spreads really quickly here. I mean, the folks that we encounter, just us, they see how we're living, and it doesn't take them long to catch on, right? They're like, holy shit, I can do this? Yeah, of course you can do this. And this is how you do it. And so they take that knowledge and then they adapt it, and then they spread it to their inner circle. And, I guess the ripple effect, carries on very strong in that sense. So there's a growing sense of community here, where people almost have the sense of a, heavy weight removed off their chest. And people are just living, like a lot, like sometimes you forget that you haven't been living when you're always worrying about this or this or this or that, right? That almost magically disappears in a place like this. And it really takes someone to come here and get a taste of it, firsthand, to really comprehend what that means. So when we do these get-togethers and we go out to have, something as simple as a coffee or like a drink, let's say at 10 p.m., where the weather's absolutely stunning, there's a nice sea breeze, the music is playing, people are out, everybody's smiling, cigars all over the place, and people are just enjoying their lives. Like, this is what living is about. And the sense of community here that you can form is very important. And I think that's going to be even more important going forward as the rest of the world crumbles, right? Like, you want to belong to a community that, is very supportive. You don't want to feel like you're all alone, on this planet, because that has a detrimental effect on you mentally. And of course, economically, socially, and all that stuff. It all follows suit. So there's a lot in play here that is connected to this whole sovereignty idea, right? It's not just about the money. It's about your life. The money needs to be safe, but you also need to be safe, and you also need to be part of something, that gives you value and where you provide value to others. And collectively, that's a very empowering position to be in, right? Like, it gives you this renewed sense of purpose that you're not going to find, unless you adopt this sovereign lifestyle. And this is what we're trying to push here, right? Trying to make people more aware of that. No one is stuck. There are options. There are always solutions. You just need to get out of your own way. Perhaps maybe accept that you might get a little bit uncomfortable in order to get very comfortable later on. And if you have kids, or families in general, it's almost like insane not to consider these options, knowing that they're available, and who knows for how long. I mean, right now, everything has a price point. When things explode, that price point will also explode. I mean, El Salvador, when they first started, they're embracing of Bitcoin and inviting people to come over because they've cleaned up the crime. The ticket to go to El Salvador was X. Now, to get citizenship in El Salvador, it's $1 million. So, right? It's not for everyone, not because they don't want to, but because a lot of people simply can't afford it. That is not the case in other countries, Panama included. But is this going to last forever? I would highly doubt it, because there's finite amount of space at some point. Like they're probably going to want to restrict it in order to keep things under control and safe and thriving and what have you. So for those who think you've got all the time in the world, you don't. Especially not at the rate as things seem to be escalating globally, right?
Yeah.
I mean, again, to go back to that incident, over the weekend, no one living in these areas in the Middle East would have even fathomed the thought of waking up one day to drones and bombs in their own country. But yet, guess what? It happened.
I think that's incredibly well said. And so I would just add here, gotta show some of our services. If you think that what Tony's described sounds like an appealing way of life, scan the QR code, schedule a free 30-minute call with our team. They can describe the residency program, the process, all of that. I think it's worth a 30-minute call for anyone. Go learn a little bit about it. Understand that there are options. Maybe it's not today, but it could be soon, right? Like we talked about it. The folks in Iran didn't maybe know that they were going to need Bitcoin, a week ago. And now here they are, and they're learning the hard way in many cases. So don't be late to the game when it comes to your own physical self-sovereignty. Protect yourself, your family. We got a good handful of comments here, Tony, that I missed while we were talking. Let's see. Nothing matters but Bitcoin. They're going to impoverish you. We had some people asking questions, I think, about.
Bring them up. Let's go.
Yeah, hang on. So we had someone asking about our Eastern European countries recommended. Live Chase, thank you for the comment. I don't know, Tony, you probably spent a bit more time in Europe than I have.
Eastern Europeans, the countries that are not part of the EU, I mean, are better options, but I would generally stay away from that region, at least in the short term.
Yeah.
But again, do your own research. We haven't, we didn't do a deep dive on these countries, but I know just from experience that Eastern European countries are usually much better than those directly implicated within the corrupt EU infrastructure.
Yeah. Someone asked if you could talk about the self-sustainable eco village being built. This is what gets me excited, man. This is why I need to get down to Panama.
The eco village is an absolutely stunning project that is almost sold out, by the way, because of incredibly high demand, and hopefully there are plans to expand it, but that'll only be announced when it's actually done. So basically, you are a little outside the main city for those that prefer the outdoorsy lifestyle. Absolutely stunning scenery. I mean, literally a page out of a fairy tale, where you are living amongst a community that is mostly comprised of Bitcoiners. So basically, you buy your own plot of land, you build your own custom home. There's no, you decide how you want to design it, very high quality across the board. And all of it is sustained by solar power. And at the same time, they have their own farm forests where there's tons of everything imaginable being grown there, including, the raising of sheep and cows and what have you, so that if you never want to leave that area, you don't have to, right? And so there's a lot of demand for that area. A lot of really good people are buying and building over there. And of course, they're all most of them are Bitcoiners. I feel sorry for those who aren't, because I don't think they will last too long before they adopt that mindset as well. But the eco village concept is growing in popularity, and I'm fairly certain we're going to see a lot more of them going forward as these circular economies continue to flourish. I mean, they're like very gated communities, and think of it as like a very private resort that is 100% self-sustainable, 100% self-protected, because everybody has guns there, so the chances of an issue is very minimal. I mean, very, very bullish on what's coming.
It's awesome. I mean, we got so many comments. By the way, Tony, we've got 173 people live right now. I just want to thank everyone for being here. We're like 2 weeks into this, and we've already this is our first time topping 150, I think. So thank you all for being here, for chiming in the chat. We really, really do appreciate it. It's a lot of fun for us. Hey, someone asked a question about self-custody. they want to know if there's value for more technical people in the work that we do. They said it, felt like more basic. Is there a class where you guys teach how to build your own wallet, program it, and build?
No, that is not something that we are involved with, unfortunately. I mean, there's the building, the coding, the programming. This is not our thing. I mean, we're here to fast track the onboarding of as many folks as possible into proper self-custody. Later on, for those who wish to dabble, perhaps, engage the use of, higher intelligence AI algorithms to do this. Of course, they're highly encouraged to pursue this. But, the main priority now, the urgency, is really to ensure that your whole self-custody setup is as bulletproof as possible, and so that you are protected, and so that you have the luxury of being able to venture into these projects later on.
Yeah, I think that's the urgency that we view, is that there are loads and loads of people who would call themselves Bitcoiners who aren't even participating in the network. They don't run a node. They hold Bitcoin on an exchange. They hold Bitcoin in some sort of vastly inferior custody solution. And we need to reach those people. We need to get them to hold Bitcoin in self-custody. And by the way, for anyone who's I think the price is pumping a little bit today, but if you're one of these people who's really excited about number go up, you want Bitcoin to go to 1 million, and you've got paper Bitcoin, it's sitting on an exchange, you bought the ETFs, you bought treasury companies, I'd say you're part of the problem. Like, the number's not going to go up if they can issue limitless paper Bitcoin. I think the minute that everyone takes self-custody is the minute that we see your purchasing power just go wild over the next couple of years.
Absolutely. Bitcoin is the ruler of money. It is the most powerful currency out there, bar none. And I keep using, that example that I post every once in a while on Twitter, where you list all the currencies, and the main one at the very top is Bitcoin with a number 1. And then you list all these other, global shitcoins, and you see how much of it one Bitcoin gives you. So if you just follow that metric, you understand that the money you want to own is that Bitcoin. But that only works if you actually own it, which means it's in your full self-custody setup, fully air-gapped. You're running your own node. You have zero connections to any third parties. Again, that mindset needs to die. Bitcoin is the money, and the desensitization to that fiat price must happen, because otherwise, most people will make irrational, emotional decisions when that price moves, right? And believe me, that price is manipulated. For those that keep arguing it's impossible, it's just supply and demand, you know what? Suck it. There's a lot of bullshit going on in the market. We know it. Anyone with a clue knows it, right? Ever since the derivatives market came about and people are using leverage and all that, all of this bullshit has come about. This is the TradFi world, and they've pushed Bitcoin into this world. Again, part of what I call the attacks on Bitcoin, right? So that people that don't know any better always assume it's a risky asset, it's a speculation, you should stay away from it. That's what they want, because when you understand that this is not the game to be played, and that Bitcoin is actually the dumbest, most simplest, most empowering thing, simply by buying it and holding it and using it as money, then if enough people do this, you remove the chips from their hands. And so in turn, you diminish their abilities to abuse it, right? But as long as people leave their money on it, leave their Bitcoin on an exchange, or think, buying an ETF is a smarter choice, or buying a treasury is a smarter choice, well, these people are just running around in circles, completely clueless, literally sitting ducks, waiting for the problem to arrive at their front door, right? And then you get these arguments, yeah, but some people don't have a choice. All right, fine. But whenever there's a will, there's always a way, right? Some of it might be more expensive, some of it might be less expensive, some of it will definitely be inconvenient. But if you understand that the long play here is your freedom, there's no price point that's too high for you to get off your ass and do things properly for the sake of yourself, your future, and your family.
And by the way, what I alluded to earlier, what we were talking about, Adam Hudson and his escape from Australia, going to Panama, right? Part of the, part of what makes that possible is the fact that he has Bitcoin in self-custody, right? if you're tied up in real estate, you can't move that, right? Like you have to liquidate. If you're tied up in ETFs and retirement accounts, if you're tied up in physical gold, right? Like the next best thing is like self-custodied physical gold. It's such a distant second though. The minute you realize I have to get on a plane and I have to escape where I am for a place like Panama that's so much better. If you can get to Panama and buy a cold card there or take yours with you, and now you've got access to the entirety of your net worth, like that's what makes Bitcoin so powerful, is you can do that. Now, do you need to be able to do that tomorrow? I don't, maybe not. But the day that comes, you're going to realize very quickly how important all of these other aspects of Bitcoin are besides its scarcity. Scarcity, obviously fundamental. That's part of the reason the number is going to go up, right? And we're going to see an increase in purchasing power in the coming years. But there's so much more to Bitcoin than just scarcity. I've always said, I know this is like a very unpopular opinion, Bitcoin could continue to we could have no hard cap on Bitcoin. And as long as it grew very, very slowly, it would still be the best form of money in the world. Like if it had gold's inflation rate, forever, it would still be so much better because it's portable, because it's divisible, because it's decentralized, because it's all of these things. Most people, I think, just underappreciate all of the attributes that make Bitcoin such an elegant form of money.
Yeah,
So
of course.
you can't take any of it for granted.
The thing is, man, when people understand that this is the money and start saving in it, given enough time, the macro environment doesn't affect you. But as long as you're measuring, the worthwhileness, I guess, of your Bitcoin in dollars, then you're still missing the point, because you will freak out, when the price dips, and you'll get all excited when it goes back up, and it'll be an emotional roller coaster, in and out. When you have enough savings in your Bitcoin, you're using it as money. You're not thinking of it, in any other fiat currency denominations. Like I've given this example many times. When somebody earns a paycheck, let's say in dollars, do they look at the Zimbabwean currency and say, oh shit, I'm making money today. Oh shit, I'm losing money? Of course not. But they do it with Bitcoin. Why? Because they've believed the Kool-Aid that Bitcoin is a stock. Bitcoin is just money that is not issued by the US government or any government, that nobody can control. So once you understand this and believe that this is something real, that it's not going to disappear, because it's not, then everything about your attitude towards Bitcoin changes. This is why a lot of our clients haven't sold a single thing during this insanity, right? A lot of the folks that we meet here or in other countries where, Bitcoin is a common thing, they use Bitcoin as money. Like they're not calculating, oh, today I'm spending more Bitcoin, shit, maybe I shouldn't do this. They're not thinking that at all, because they've gotten into Bitcoin long enough that if they spend a little bit more today, it's not the end of the world, because tomorrow they'll spend a little bit less. And as long as you're in a position to spend and replace, that'll be the case for everybody. So instead of earning, if you can, in worthless money, earn it in Bitcoin. If you can't, find ways to convert as much of it as makes you comfortable into sound money. And at some point, no matter the amount, the number on the screen, that will represent the purchasing power that the macro environment will not have a significant impact on, right? And so it takes time for people to unlearn, the lies that we've been told. It's almost like a bad drug addiction. This shit is killing you, but somehow you feel safe injecting yourself with more of it. That needs to stop. And unless somebody rips you out of it, and cleans you, it's gonna take some time. In my case, it was like somebody literally ripped me out of that world and cleansed me. That's why there's no chance in hell I ever go back. And many folks that have experienced some flavor of what I've gone through are in the same boat. So we don't want people to go through hell to understand this. There's enough people, thankfully, are open-minded enough to absorb this information. They're verifying it for themselves. It's not like they're just taking our words for it. They're going out, doing their own research, and then coming back for the fine-tuned process to get this right the first time. Because this is what we do here at the Bitcoin Way, right? Once you understand why you need to be here, we will make sure you are airtight in every sense. Because this isn't just about, oh, I need to configure a wallet. When you are a sovereign individual, there's 1,000,001 components around your life that needs to be looked at as well. That is how you become a complete sovereign individual. And so all of this is thoroughly and meticulously looked at by our entire team, and we're always updating this as we learn new stuff, as the world progresses, as new information is provided to us. We are continuously fine-tuning this process, because it is a process. There's no set it and forget it in a sovereign lifestyle, but it's a very exciting one. It's not something to be fearful of or to become overwhelmed with. It's the complete opposite. Like, I mean, you are in full control of your life. You can decide to do whatever it is that you want at any point in time. Just go into any bank and try to do any simple transaction these days, and just tell yourself if you want to deal with that nightmare on a regular basis. I mean, that is, the best advertisement for why you should leave that world behind and walk into somewhere where it just doesn't exist, right? And stop empowering that same broken system that is founded on threats and tyranny, right? Bitcoin is the peaceful revolution.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with that more. And, again, I think some people are going to come through this, come to Bitcoin through max pain. I think some people are going to go to the bank and they're not going to be able to withdraw, $1,000. And I think a handful of folks are going to continue to be curious and find Bitcoin because they're willing to ask all of these questions. But it feels like an uphill battle sometimes. We got to keep doing our part. That's why we do these live streams. I hope everyone else is participating in their own personal lives, trying to onboard friends, family, the local coffee shop down the road that you go to. Just start the conversation, because I think there are going to be a lot of people in my life who are kicking themselves that they knew a guy who worked in Bitcoin, talked about Bitcoin, tried to explain Bitcoin. And I think I've done so more patiently and better than, the last year than I did the previous year. But we just got to keep doing our part. So Tony, any final thoughts before we close out? I'm going to pull up our QR code. So if anyone wants to talk to us about self-custody, Plan B, anything, scan the QR code, schedule a free 30-minute consult with our team. Would highly, highly encourage that.
Absolutely, man. No final words unless somebody has like some questions they want to sneak in the last 5 minutes, that's fine. But generally speaking, it's important for more folks to genuinely be aware of what is going on in the world and to question everything, right? Like, the narratives out there, 99% of them are complete rubbish. And the truth exists. It just requires a little bit of manual work in order to find it, right? And as long as you surround yourself with the right crowd, access to that information becomes much easier. There's a golden opportunity for a very, very beautiful future for 8.3 billion people, man. It's not restricted to any elite or any high net worth individual. This is an opportunity that is available to everyone, regardless of where you come from, how much money you have. It doesn't really matter. Whoever's paying attention now wins. It's as simple as that.
Well said. Carla said she had her accounts of 40 years with a bank in Australia shut down for 10 days for trying to purchase Bitcoin.
There you go.
And, Nuclear Oppenheimer Project. Appreciate the many, many comments you left. It's hard to leave. Step by step, people can't get out together easily. Maybe you can explain the steps. I think that's what we need to do, is we just need to explain this to people and give them perspective that there is an opt-out. And I think more people are waking up. I think it's going to take time, but hopefully not as long as.
The thing is with the steps is that it's not a copy paste procedure. It really depends on where you are, where you live, what your situation is. But the bottom line is the common denominator is that there's always a solution, right? Like, some people it's a few more steps, some people it's a few less steps. It doesn't really matter. The point is to go from hell to something better. That is the objective. And as long as you're consistent and you carry through with that mission, you'll get there.
Well said. Alrighty. Again, for everyone who tuned in, we really appreciate you being here. We're going to be back same time, same place Wednesday. Just so you know, we also have our Spaces Bitcoin Banter live tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So join us there. That's an opportunity for us to invite people onto stage and talk, ask questions, give their insights and thoughts on what we're discussing, but a bit more news focused on that. So be sure to join us. For all of the many segments that we have and offer, Tony and I are almost always on, so we look forward to that. But Tony, thank you for your time today, man, and for everyone who joined, we really appreciate it.
Always good riffing with you, Michael. Catch you on the next one.
Same, brother. Cheers.